You're listening to Ghostumentary Scary Short Stories, original pieces updated throughout the week.
Tyler's Night on the Roof. It was 8:14 on a Sunday night in 1983, just 11 days before Christmas, and the Carr family was crowded around the television in their living room, settling in to watch a Charlie Brown Christmas. The static-filled screen flickered against the walls, painting the room in dancing blues and whites, as the old TV antenna on the roof swayed against the howling wind outside. Storm clouds pressed low, and lightning flickered in the distance, a signal of the rain to come. Tyler Carr, 14, the eldest of 3 kids, sat with his younger siblings, Kevin and Tiffany, huddled on the floor, while their parents, Tom and Cheryl, sat on the couch. This was supposed to be a quiet, cosy night, a night for Christmas cartoons and popcorn, but the wind had other plans. The antenna shivered and sent waves of static over the screen until Charlie Brown's tree disappeared into crackling grey snow. "Dad, the antenna!" Tyler's dad groaned, already getting up, pulling Tyler along with him. "Get on the roof, Tyler. Just move it a little, right?" Tom barked. The request stung. He wasn't allowed on the roof on bright, sunny days. His dad wouldn't let him help with the Christmas lights just a week ago. But on a night when thunder rumbled in the sky, when the wind howled like a wild thing, he was expected to climb up there alone, no questions asked. Outside, Tyler made his way up the ladder that stayed propped against the back of the house year-round. As soon as he climbed up, he was nearly knocked back by the fierce wind. Shivering, he yelled, "I'm up here!" to his dad below. "Turn it!" his dad shouted, muffled through the noise of the storm. Tyler gripped the cold metal pole and twisted it, waiting for his dad's call. "Now?" "No," his dad's voice echoed. A few more turns. "Now?" "Almost." He twisted and strained, trying to catch his dad's voice as the storm raged. He spun the antenna as far as he could, yelling over the storm, "Now?" But this time, there was no answer. Tyler stopped, his hand gripping the cold metal, and strained his ears. Maybe he just couldn't hear through the wind. But then he heard a faint, shrill sound, a scream, sharp enough to slice through the noise. It was his sister. Tiffany's scream echoed up to him, chilling him even more than the storm. His heart pounded. He left the antenna and crawled toward the front of the house, keeping low, trying to peer down over the edge without being seen. The Carrs lived in a quiet neighborhood, a suburban lull of 1983 that suddenly felt too quiet, too exposed. As Tyler crawled along the roof, he spotted something unusual. A car in the driveway, a beat-up sedan, old and rusty with a cracked windshield. He didn't recognize it. Whoever owned it didn't belong here. Panic gripped him tighter than the wind. Lying flat, he pressed his ear against the roof, desperate to hear something, anything. All he got was the hollow hum of air circulating from the heater. The storm's howl drowned out everything else. Then Tiffany's scream again, louder this time, closer to the front of the house. Tyler slithered to the edge, his heart pounding. He tried to lean over to get the edge to get a better look. He hoped legs would be heavy enough to keep him from falling over. He was terrified that the weight of his body would send him toppling down. He wiggled his body back and forth to move inch by inch. He hoped to get closer enough to see what was going on, but suddenly felt his body sliding off. His heart dropped. He pulled himself back, shaking with fear and cold, and crawled toward the ladder, hoping he could slip down unseen. He crept toward the back, moving quietly when he heard something worse than the screams. Voices, two men's voices, low, muttering words he could barely make out. The ladder scraped against the house and then, thud, it clattered to the ground. They'd taken his only escape. Trapped, he lay frozen, the terror settling deep in his bones. Tyler considered the neighbours, the Stantons, who lived a few yards away. If only he could throw something to get their attention. He tugged off one shoe and lobbed it toward the Stanton house, but it landed too short, skidding across the wet grass. He'd have to throw harder. One more shoe, one more chance. With all his strength, he hurled his second shoe. The shoe landed on the roof with an unimpressive thud. It wouldn't be loud enough for anyone to hear, much less investigate, but a moment later it moved. It began to roll off the roof. It gained speed and fell down to the ground, yet struck their metal trash can with a clang that echoed like a fire bell. He froze, hoping it would be enough. Moments later, Mr. Stanton emerged, flashlight in hand, looking confused as he peered at the fallen shoe, but the old man was moving too slowly. Tyler pulled out his wallet, a cheap nylon one he'd bought at a flea market. He didn't need it. He had no money or ID, no credit cards or even any photos. But having it made him feel a bit older and grown up. He pulled it from his pocket and tossed it toward Mr. Stanton, who spotted it and cautiously approached. He moved toward Tyler's house, wallet in hand, while Tyler watched, hoping, praying for help. Tyler tried to get his attention but had no luck. It was too dark, and he did not dare to make any noise to alert the intruders. But he waved his hands in hope, but with no success. Mr. Stanton reached the door and knocked. Tyler could hear the door open, and then he heard a struggle, a heavy thud, and then silence. The door closed, and Mr. Stanton was gone. Alone, hopeless, Tyler edged his way toward the driveway side of the roof. He could barely see through the now pouring rain, but he spotted the family's old station wagon, the big metal hood gleaming faintly in the storm. If he could make it onto that, he might avoid breaking his legs in a fall. Tyler's father told him 1,000 times that if he ever fell off the roof, he'd break his neck. He never believed him. But now, as Tyler calculated the process of leaping to the ground, he understood the dangers. He scooted to the edge, dangling his feet over, holding his breath, and pushed himself off. Pain exploded in his leg as he crashed onto the hood, rolling off and crumpling onto the cold concrete below. He wheezed, struggling to catch his breath, fighting through the pain. As he realized the sound that must have made, he heard the front door of his home open. He rolled himself under the station wagon. The dirt and rust filled his face as he wedged himself in. He could hear the footsteps approach him as they patrolled the driveway. "Richard, that you?" the man asked. There was as much fear as authority in their voice. The man walked around between the car and the house a few times, then walked back in. Tyler pulled himself to his feet, biting back a scream, and limped toward the Stanton house. Halfway there, he spotted Mrs. Stanton emerging, probably searching for her husband. She waved at him, and he managed to gasp out a warning. "Call the police," he begged, his voice barely a whisper. Her eyes went wide with fear, and she ran back toward her house. But before she reached the door, a figure moved in her living room window, casting a shadow across the curtains. One of the men was inside her house now, waiting. Tyler waved desperately, trying to warn her, but she slipped inside and closed the door. He didn't know if she'd make it to the phone or if she was already lost. Desperate, he turned toward the street. Maybe he could reach his friend Jimmy's house a few blocks down. Each step felt like fire, his leg throbbing with every jolt of pain. But he forced himself onward, crawling, staggering, down the cold, wet pavement. It was a crawl through hell. The car's Christmas lights blinked in the distance, an absurd mockery of safety and warmth. Tyler kept his gaze on Jimmy's house, inching closer, until he reached the door and pounded on it, leaving red smears from his scraped knuckles. He waited, heart pounding. Finally, the door creaked open, and he looked up into a stranger's face, a man dressed in black, his expression a mix of amusement and malice. Behind him, Tyler saw Jimmy's family bound and gagged on the floor. The man grabbed Tyler and viciously threw him to the living room floor. Tyler tasted the stale shag carpeting as he hit the ground, the metallic tang of blood filling his mouth as well. Tyler Carr had lost. The darkness had swallowed him, and he knew, even as he lay there, the nightmare was far from over.
Looking for more scary tales? Subscribe to our podcast and visit ghostumentary.com. Let us know what you think or share with us your scary tales. We might just make a new story from it.